Hello, hello. Can I be promoted, please? Hello. No, yo no estoy promovido tampoco. ¿Quién sabe quién abrió la reunión? Y no tenemos un channel, back channel. ¿Sí? Y pones a producción. Sí. Hello, hello.
Oh, okay, we'll start then. Can you hear me, Hector?
Yes, I can hear you well, and we have quorum.
Okay, good. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to this meeting of COBRO. Please note that we do have simultaneous interpretation available, and I would like our interpreter to briefly explain how this feature works and provide the information in the chat if possible. So, interpreter.
Good afternoon. My name is Nancy Hand, and I'll be the interpreter for this meeting. And I will give instructions in Spanish, followed by instructions in English. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, que es como un globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en un celular o tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos o 3 puntos, luego interpretación, interpretation, y luego el idioma que desea. To use the Zoom interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls appear. Click on the interpretation icon that looks like a globe and select English as your language. If you are joining using the Zoom mobile app on a cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me briefly go over the process and guidelines for conducting the Zoom meeting. For COBRO members, you're not automatically muted by the meeting organizer, so you'll have to mute and unmute yourself. In addition, when you'd like to speak, please turn on your camera or raise your hand by opening your participants panel on the Zoom toolbar and clicking the raised hand at the bottom. Once the staff sees you, you will be recognized at that time. I'll have to ask the staff to look for that since I'm on an iPhone and I really can't see everything at the same time. For members of the public who would like to speak on an item, please use the raise hand icon in the Zoom toolbar. When you're called, you'll be unmuted by Sandag staff. If you're calling in by phone, you will need to enter *6 to unmute yourself. After your comments, you will be muted by Sandag staff. If you're calling into the meeting, please press *9 on your phone if you would like to comment on an item. All comments, whether emailed or live, will be made part of today's meeting record. If there are any questions about this, staff can answer any questions on the procedures at this time. Well, before we start, I just wanted to mention that last week there was an interesting, really historical meeting of the Borders Committee, which I attend representing COBRO. The Borders Committee celebrated 20 years of meetings, and COBRO has now been around for almost 26 years. So the two committees really provide really impressive continuity for a trans-border focus in our region. A lot has happened since the COBRO and Borders Committee were formed. NAFTA is now old news, and we have its replacement, the USMCA in place. 9/11 has changed the border. COVID changed the border. And we have significant new achievements. The reconfiguration of San Isidro Port of Entry, the Cross-Border Express is an astounding success. And Otay Mesa East, Otay 2 is almost here. We still have significant challenges, particularly in terms of management of cross-border contamination issues with the Tijuana River watershed. So it's a pleasure to see and be with you all again, and let's move on to the agenda. Item number 1 is approval of the meeting minutes. If I could have a motion from one of the COBRO members and a second, I'd appreciate that.
I move to approve.
Thank you. Second?
Jason Wells, I'll second that.
Thanks. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It carries. Thank you very much. Now, next we have a public comment period. Do we have any public comments on the minutes from the public or the staff?
I don't see hands from the public, Chair Pastor.
Okay, then we'll move on to a legislative report by Hector Vanegas. Hector?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This morning, besides saying hi to everybody, that I'm very pleased to see you. We are now, last time we met was in 2021, so now we are in the spring of 2022. But today I want to refer to AB 617, that is also known as the Community Air Protection Program, which allows CARB, the California Air Resources Board, to establish a community air program protection or protection program, to reduce exposure in communities that are most impacted by air pollution. Why I'm referring to this is because in January of this year, SANDAG sent a letter supporting the nomination from the San Diego Air Pollution Control District to select the San Diego International Border Community, which includes San Isidro, the Tijuana River Estuary, and Otay Mesa, for an air monitoring program and emission reductions program. I am pleased to share that in February, CARB took the unanimous action to add San Diego International Border Community under the 4th annual selection of communities under AB 617 Community Air Protection Program. This nomination was supported by arguments such as the findings from the Calembio Screen 4.0 model that identifies the International Border Community Census Tract to have the highest traffic impact percentile across the state of California, which are at 93+ percentile of exposure of PM 2.5 particles. Also, I want to report that as part of SANDAG Transit Equity Pilot, SANDAG is partnering with the Metropolitan Transit System, the North County Transit District, and the County of San Diego to launch the Youth Opportunity Pass pilot program to help achieve the goals of the 2021 regional plan to create a more equitable region by ensuring that safe, healthy, and accessible opportunities are available to anyone. As a next topic, I want to refer to some issues regarding housing and mobility south of the border. And as you remember, one of the big lessons from the pandemic is that both subregions, Tijuana and San Diego, share a cross-border community. And, we used to refer to people coming from San Diego or people coming from the United States, depending on where you were standing. But in fact, these are just people returning to San Diego or returning to Baja California. This is the lesson because the land border crossings were operating with restrictions, and these were thousands of people. In this context, I responded to a call from Implan to participate in a small dialogue that raised very important angles from their perspective. For example, that from the US perspective, sewage is the most pressing subject, while border crossings, mobility, and air pollution are from the Mexican perspective, including the impacts of humanitarian refugees, as you might hear in the news lately. Traffic congestion is becoming almost a permanent condition in Tijuana, worsening on Fridays when more people return from the US. And the queue line to cross to San Isidro can be over 6 miles or 10 kilometers, cutting the city in half, which is terrible. During the pandemic, the number of people relocating from the United States increased and is growing. So Tijuana, it's no doubt a housing city for San Diego, as San Diego is becoming the most unaffordable housing market. Dialogue will continue with the intention of generating data for better understanding of this matter. Also very important is Title 42, the order of termination of this. And very briefly, let me comment that something you may know, this is and is going to impact the border. Effective May 23rd, the CDC is terminating Title 42, the public health order that was enacted to protect against the spread of communicable disease. With this, DHS will start processing individuals seeking humanitarian refuge. Unfortunately, our authorities are anticipating misunderstandings that may result in increased immigrants seeking the North without the known impacts to our communities, even to the perception of the border. Also, last week, a special envoy for climate, John Kerry, visited Mexico City and held discussions with Mexican officials to speed up a North American transition toward clean energies. These discussions included the principles that should guide policies in the energy sector for the whole region of North America, considering the just recently approved new free trade agreement, the USMCA. It is important to mention that all of this is happening during the time Mexico is reorganizing its energy market, including amending its constitutional energy reform made in 2013. Both countries have some differences in their perspectives, but have expressed commitment to achieve a common goal. So this is important topic also for our border region. And I'm almost concluding, be patient with me. Let me just make a reference to Mexico's effort to legislate on road safety and mobility. Last week, the lower house or Cámara de Diputados approved the draft of a new general law on mobility and road safety, which will be the framework and guidelines to reduce road deaths, centering on humans over vehicles. This is a big achievement in Mexico. The intention of this new law is to lay the foundation for the mobility and road policy through the new national system of mobility and road safety that will prioritize the displacement of people, particularly those groups in vulnerable situations. This document was forwarded to the Senate of the Republic for ratification, and once approved, will be ensuring that mobility is available to all people on an equal footing without discrimination at an affordable cost, and clearly in time. Information will be becoming a law, and this information, and this will become a law in Mexico. I'm concluding, leaving open this for later on the agenda, but May 2019 is going to be Back to Work Day in Tijuana and BC, and I will leave that for one of our reports later. And with that, I conclude my report, Chair Gunster. I'm available if you have questions.
Thank you, Hector. Excellent report, and a lot to think about, a lot of changes nationally and regionally that we need to continue. Before we move on, let me ask if any COBRA members have any comments or questions. If so, let us know.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. And no comments from the public, I assume. Okay, well, let's move on to item number 4. This item was presented at a meeting of the Borders Committee last month, but I wanted to have it presented here because these projects represent a great opportunity for our region, the whole region, both sides of the border. We have 2 different projects on each side of the border, but have a much larger potential if linked. Of course, that is a challenge. Also, I think if we view these projects within the context of other efforts, such as the San Diego Tijuana 2024 World Design Capital designation, I think we can understand better how we really are talking about a large transborder binational region with many growing linkages. So the agenda item is a series of 3 presentations. So what I'd like to do is have the presentations and then at the end open it up for questions and comments. So first, let me welcome Mari Parra, who will be sharing updates on the Border to Bayshore Bikeway, a project that we've heard about regularly over the last several years.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, well, thank you for having me here today. I'm happy to report an update on the Border to Bayshore Bikeway project. I am the SANDAC project manager. My name is Malay Para, and is somebody controlling the PowerPoint? I just want to make sure whether or not I need to share my screen.
I am Malay, but if you feel more comfortable sharing your screen, feel free to take over.
No, that's perfect, Zach. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. Okay, and then we can go to the next slide, please. So we have here an update, like I said, on the Border to Bayshore Bikeway project, and we will be constructing a 6.5-mile urban bikeway, which connects to the San Isidro pedestrian border port of entry, specifically PET East, and borders with our neighbors in Tijuana to the south, and with the San Diego Bay multi-use path, which exists currently in the city of Imperial Beach. And to develop the project, we looked at a lot of key destinations in the area, and a lot of places were considered of interest within the community, such as schools, parks, and shopping centers. And then we also looked at, of course, the Border to Bayshore Bikeway and everything in between. We looked at the crossings through existing interstate freeways, as we do have some crossings, through the 805, the 905 freeway, and then the 5 freeway. And then if we can go to the next slide, please. So the image before you is in the city of Imperial Beach, and this is a very busy intersection in terms of vehicle traffic in Imperial Beach Avenue, which runs north-south, and 13th Street, I'm sorry, Imperial Beach Avenue, which is east-westbound, and 13th Street, which is north and southbound. And then we saw here as a good opportunity to have physical separation, especially in places like this that already has high traffic volumes. And this is a prime example of what we can do at this location, at this particular intersection, where we are implementing bike lanes on 13th Street. And we will show in the next slide sort of the traffic control measure that we're implementing. And if we can go to the next slide, please. Excuse me. So the image before you is a rendering of what a physical separation feature is going to look like, and specifically at this location, where we have the use of colors that is proposed, the bright green to differentiate the routes of the cyclists, and not only cyclists, but it's also people who are scooting, and they can easily identify their designated space and separate that from vehicle traffic. And we know also that there are pedestrians and cyclists sometimes that, are the vulnerable road users. So here we have as well a pop out or an extension of the sidewalk, where this is used as protection for cyclists and people walking, so people who are about to head into the intersection can safely do so. Because with the pop out, what that does is that increases that visibility, that increases that turning radii for vehicles turning right, forces them to slow down, and then the periphery is whitened, and they're able to see, again, people walking, biking, scooting, and that sort of thing. And then we can go to the next slide, please. In this slide, we have another project feature of a neighborhood traffic circle, or better known as a mini roundabout. So this is another traffic calming concept that is proposed at different locations on this project. This is more in the city, the portion of the city of San Diego. Again, this project is multi-jurisdictional. Excuse me. The mini roundabouts are used in key locations in the project and at intersections to reduce speed and increase visibility. That is ultimately the goal of what we want to do: increase visibility, increase the safety of those vulnerable road users, people who are crossing the street at the different intersections, different points of the intersection, people who are sharing the road with vehicles, and so on. And so here the goal is to offer more safety to people walking, biking, and scooting. And whether this is with street, with the facility on the street, I should say, it is preferred that cyclists are separated from traffic. However, sometimes if we're in a residential area and traffic volumes are lower, then it may be okay and more feasible to implement measures that reduce the speed of vehicles in favor of the visibility of cyclists and pedestrians. And sometimes we're only able to share the road and not have separated facilities, such as some of these instances where we're proposing the mini roundabouts on residential streets. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So some of the recent accomplishments here, we have, just to give us an idea of recent accomplishments from the agency, we got final sign off from both cities, the city of Imperial Beach and the city of San Diego last year. We obtained, because we are crossing, we have three, I'm sorry. We have to go through the California Public Utilities Commission. We obtained the forms and the permission from the CPUC. We are getting the Caltrans encroachment permit, and we also received construction allocation funds from the California Transportation Commission. And then now the anticipated schedule looking ahead is to begin to advertise the project for construction in late April. So that would be later this month, begin construction in the summer, and this project is slated to be open to the public in early 2025. And then next slide, please. Now for the schedule, just again, more in a linear matter. I don't want to be overly redundant, but if we have any questions, we can go over this. But we're currently in the final design phase until we go into construction, which again, it is slated to occur in the summer of this year. And next slide. And then last but not least, my information. My name is Madai Para again, and if folks have any questions, thoughts, or comments, they can email gobyBike@sandac.org, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we'll move on to our next report. Janely Quintero from the city of Tijuana will present on the Ciclovia Binacional.
Ya pues.
Hola, muy buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Janely Quintero. Yo soy la directora de la Secretaría de Movilidad. Pues vamos a retomar un tema que tenemos por instrucciones de la alcaldesa, la licenciada Montserrat Caballero Ramírez, darle seguimiento a esta ciclovía que hemos venido trabajando ya algunos meses atrás. Queremos recordar que pues desde que se inició esta administración en octubre de 2021, nos hemos dado la tarea como secretaría a implementar unas medidas que nos ayuden en priorizar la movilidad, ya sea peatonal o como un medio de transporte no motorizado. No sé si podrían dar las siguientes slide. Sí. Guiándonos, nosotros estamos en una etapa de proyecto conceptual. Estamos realizando ahorita los debidos estudios para ya tener una visión más amplia de lo que vamos a ir generando. Esta ciclovía binacional surge de lo que es un plan maestro ya establecido de diferentes rutas que ya se han estudiado. Entonces, ahorita la que les voy a comentar, más que nada está enfocada en lo que es la línea de San Isidro, que vendría siendo la línea roja que está de esa zona urbana Río Tijuana. Esta ciclovía, no sé si me pueda, la siguiente slide, por favor. Gracias. En esta ciclovía estamos hablando de que son 4.5 kilómetros aproximadamente. La idea es salir de lo que es la garita de San Isidro mediante la línea peatonal y hacer un recorrido hasta llegar a lo que es la avenida Revolución. De ahí regresaríamos a lo que es conectar por diferentes vialidades como es la calle Cuarta, Paseo de los Héroes, Márquez de León y Paseo Centenario. Es llegando así a formar un recorrido que nos va a volver a dejar en el punto de llegada que es la garita de San Isidro. Este proyecto nosotros ya, como les comentaba, lo tenemos en una etapa de proyecto conceptual. Ya tenemos bosquejos, ya tenemos algunos planos, pero todavía se continúa su estudio o ver las factibilidades. Ya hemos estado en pláticas con diferentes instituciones para que pues nos den sus opiniones, sus puntos de vista, su vivencia diaria y llegar a lograr que sea no solo como un medio recreativo, sino también sea un medio de transporte, que en el cual esta ruta se pueda utilizar para la vida diaria. ¿Me podrían pasar a la siguiente slide? Ok, gracias. En nuestro punto que tenemos ahorita como más, pues no sé, no conflictivo, sino ahorita de gran relevancia es el cómo vamos a conectar las dos ciclovías. Entonces, nosotros estamos haciendo la propuesta de llegarla donde está la flechita de inicio. Ahí iniciaría porque está el cruce peatonal y ahí llegas. Estamos ahora sí que en pláticas o ver cómo sería la manera más adecuada que estas dos ciclovías pudiesen llegar a conectarse una con la otra. ¿Qué otro tema? Pues, creo que por mi parte ahorita, si me pueden poner la siguiente, creo que ya sería la información que les proporcionaríamos ahorita para que estén en conocimiento de lo que se está trabajando. Se están llevando diferentes reuniones, como les comentaba, para poder continuar el desarrollo de esta ciclovía, pero con la encomienda de seguir este proyecto y lograr que se tenga una conectividad para que esta realmente llegue a ser una ciclovía binacional. Por mi parte sería todo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. And to complement this presentation, we will hear from Elizabeth Cheney and Daniel Gomez from Alianza por la Movilidad Activa, as well as Tomás Pérez Vargas from CDT Tijuana, who will share some reflections and discuss the Bike to Work and Tijuaneando en Bici events. Please take it away.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Hector, is it okay if I take control of the presentation and share my screen? Would that work better for you? Can I?
Oh,
There we go. Okay, can you guys, can you just confirm that you can see it?
Not yet.
oh no, oh no.
Okay, let's try again. Can we get it there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I'll switch to Spanish just to follow Janelli's presentation. Muy buenas tardes, mi nombre es Tomás Pérez Vargas, soy consejero, líder del eje de movilidad del Consejo de Desarrollo de Tijuana. Y como bien comentaba Janelli, este proyecto, esta iniciativa de las ciclovías ya tiene una historia, viene más allá de la presente administración. Inclusive anteriores líderes de movilidad en el CDT venían colaborando con las autoridades para tratar de ir cerrando ese plan maestro y pues ir caminando de forma que se avance en el proyecto. El CDT es una asociación de empresarios que su función principal es ok, it's not changing, porque no pasa la, ok. Su objetivo principal es darle continuidad a proyectos de desarrollo para Tijuana. Conjuntamente con AMA, Elizabeth, que ahí está con nosotros, y Daniel, hemos trabajado ya varios meses en conjunto en empujar el proyecto y sobre todo dar crítica constructiva sobre las
Observaciones,
okay,
vamos a decir, sí.
recomendaciones sobre las rutas. En específico la ciclovía, ahí estamos cuando hicimos un recorrido por esa ciclovía y dimos, como bien me comenta Elizabeth, una serie de recomendaciones para hacerla un poco más amigable, más segura. Voy a ver si puedo cambiar aquí, espero no perderlos a todos. Me voy a ir a Google porque aquí es lo que mencionaba Paul al principio. Se puede ver en azul la línea de Maday, la de Border Bayshore Bikeway, y tenemos en rojo las líneas del programa de ciclovías del centro. La más del centro, la parte de la ciclovía binacional es la más interna. Y lo que andamos tratando de poner y de concientizar es que la BBB, que le llamo yo por Border Bayshore Bikeway, BBB, termina en este punto y nosotros, la binacional, arranca en este punto. Como usuario, yo he recorrido esta ruta bastante, por lo menos en los últimos meses, yo creo que fácil más de 30 veces he cruzado por aquí en bicicleta. Y por eso dibujo la ruta con ese color azul bajito, ok, me bajo del trolley, camino, cruzo por la Puerta México y prácticamente salgo al punto inicial donde comentaba Janelli. En el regreso, casi siempre también me vengo yo del centro, y llego aquí a Vía Centenario, pero la forma para ingresar, pues prácticamente me ingreso por el carril de los camiones.
Tomás,
¿Por qué por el carril de los camiones? Porque el tratar de hacerlo por el camino peatonal se vuelve, como pueden ver en la foto, muy complicado. Y si han visto ayer o antier, está más complicado por la cuestión de todos los inmigrantes que están llegando de diferentes partes del mundo. Ahorita tenemos en Tijuana los ucranios, y se vuelve prácticamente imposible andar en bicicleta allí, además de que pues alguien puede salir golpeado. Entonces queremos aprovechar, y ahorita ya le paso el micrófono a Elizabeth. El próximo 19 de mayo es el evento de Tijuaneando en Bici, es el mismo día que Bike to Work Day. Obviamente yo espero estar allí, estar en bicicleta. Sé que va a haber unos talleres de trabajo que está promoviendo la Secretaría de Movilidad. Específicamente hemos levantado la mano y va a haber una mesa de trabajo para platicar y ver cuál es la mejor forma de este punto de regreso. El punto de salida está muy claro, no hay conflicto, no es problema, pero el punto de regreso es el que hace más sentido de alguna forma a través del camino. Pero eso es lo que queremos poner en esta mesa de trabajo, escuchar gente que nos pueda dar su opinión. Vi en la lista de participantes que hay muchas de las dependencias, vi ahí el Implan, espero que esté con nosotros para que también nos dé su apoyo, pero también la parte americana, que también nos pueda dar su apoyo de cómo lo ven ellos, ¿no? Y con esto prácticamente yo termino mi parte de la presentación, y si gustas, Elizabeth, tomar el micrófono.
Ok, muy bien, muy bien. Muchas gracias, muchas gracias.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes, como que me presento Elizabeth y conmigo
Daniel.
está Daniel Gómez. Vamos a contar rápidamente un poco de la historia de Tijuaneando en Bici, un evento hermanada con el Bike to Work Day del condado de San Diego. Si puedes pasar a la siguiente. Como que desde el 2011 hemos tenido diferentes actividades, como que, por ejemplo, ven, en el primer año hubo un convivio, también en el 2014, como que me acuerdo que cuando hubo un estacionamiento de bicicletas cercana de la frontera, esto fue un punto de reunión. En el 2017 fue como una vez que presentaron el proyecto de Border to Bayshore Bikeway en las instalaciones de Casa Familiar de San Isidro. En el 2018-2019 lo que hicimos fue apurar usuarios de bici que llegaron al Chaparral o a lo que es Fed West. A la siguiente lámina.
Simultáneo con San Isidro.
Sí. No, aquí esto fue la actividad del año pasado que se hizo como un evento virtual con diferentes presentaciones. Hay uno retomando lo que comentó Yaneli, que el entonces director del Implan, el arquitecto Rodolfo Argote, presentó a los diferentes proyectos de ciclovía. También nos acompañó Giovanni Sayas de Puebla, que comentó de una iniciativa de promover vías recreativas. Héctor presentó lo del Border to Bayshore Bikeway. Y a finales de algo, hay una noticia muy interesante en relación a la presentación de Alejandra Leal. Alejandra es la vocera de la Coalición Movilidad Segura, que es una red de organizaciones en México que hemos estado promoviendo un proyecto de ley general de movilidad y seguridad vial desde más o menos el 2014 formalmente. Ha sido un proceso muy, muy interesante. En la semana pasada, como que en el mes de diciembre se pasó por el Senado de la República, el decreto o la minuta, el dictamen de ley. Ha estado en la Cámara de Diputados en estos meses, y en la semana pasada lo llevaron al Pleno de la Cámara de Diputados. Salió con algunas reservas, que más que otra cosa son reservas por el sector de la industria automotriz, que están un poco como renuentes con el tema de los vehículos seguros. Pero bueno, hoy, el día de ayer, se consideró las reservas en la Comisión de Zonas Metropolitanas y Movilidad del Senado, y hoy llevó al Pleno del Senado de nuevo para contemplar con las reservas del diputado que su apellido es Borrego. Y ya tengo entendido por parte de la coalición que ya pasó el Pleno del Senado y solo lo que sigue es la publicación en el diario oficial federal. Pero bueno, vamos a la siguiente lámina. Okay, hay algunas cosas que... en este año tenemos entendido que la Secretaría de Movilidad está anunciando realizar un taller con el tema de la movilidad no motorizada el día viernes 19 de mayo, que es el día que coincide con el día de ir al trabajo en bici o el tijuaneando en bici. Sería a través de este taller en donde se puede exponer al público en general el proyecto de ciclovías que están trabajando. De nuestra experiencia, es algo muy importante la socialización de los proyectos para que podemos llegar a un consenso por parte del público y así tener una mejor aceptación de la obra cuando viene. Se propone después del taller en las instalaciones de la Canaco, que va a estar en horario de las 9 hasta la 1. Proponemos realizar un recorrido para visibilizar la ruta propuesta y concluir con una actividad en un espacio cercano de la línea, con la idea de socializar las experiencias obtenidas en las actividades de la mañana. Todos aquí cordialmente invitados y así termino mi parte.
Thank you very much. I'd like to see now if members from Cobra would like to offer any comments. If you do, please turn on your camera or let us know at this time.
Jason Wells tiene su mano y luego Laura Araujo.
Jason?
Yes. Oh, hey, sorry. Good afternoon. I just wanted to, I wanted to thank Sandag staff. Miley, I know it's a little bit before your time, but in working with San Isidro and the business community here on looking at the actual trajectory or the track of the Bayshore Bikeway. It was, I know Sandag began the project with a totally different vision than what the community had. And so I just really, it was truly an outreach effort on Sandag's part, and we really appreciate it. We're just looking forward to getting the shovel in the dirt and getting bikes rolling. So thank you. That was it.
Laura?
Hi. Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Laura Araujo de Tijuana Innovadora. I'd just like to ask if this is fantastic news, of course. We know that the city of San Diego has made a few efforts to create ciclovías and others. But in those cases, and what I see here is there is a difference in culture between the two cities, and there's a difference in needs. So are any of these projects considering infrastructure for bike riders, like parking areas, places where they can leave their bikes and pick them up, or even some of the services that we have or that are available, in San Diego, like, renting bicycles and this. Are any of the projects considering this?
Who can respond to that?
Laura, your question was also for San Diego. Okay, Madai unfortunately needed to leave the meeting, but I'll try to answer. And of course, if it's not complete, we can complete later the information. But the Border to Bayshore Bikeway is a full project that includes a lot of the enhancement needed for transiting on the streets. What we know is that little by little, these routes start developing the services that you are mentioning. Like, for example, in the city of Imperial Beach, they have a bike station that was created because of the Bayshore Byway. So I think that that's the answer I have for you from the San Diego area.
Thank you, Hector. And on the Tijuana side, maybe from Rodolfo Argote's office, are we planning any services for this binational ciclovía?
Hola, perdón, una disculpa, lo que pasa es que el internet está fallando mucho y por eso tengo que estarme desconectando. Sí, el proyecto sí incluye paradas para las bicicletas, incluso todos los parámetros de diseño se están considerando adecuados mediante lineamientos para que sean seguros para los ciclistas. Incluso se está, aunado a esto, se quiere llevar a cabo campañas de cultura vial, las cuales traten de concientizar a la población de que que la cuestión de los ciclistas se mantiene otro tipo de circunstancias. Entonces, sí se tienen que tomar estas consideraciones, incluso si se tiene que llegar a bajar límites de velocidad en ciertas áreas donde va a pasar la ciclovía, se está considerando todo este tipo de acciones.
Excelente, muchas gracias.
Other comments by Cobra members? Oh, how about the public then?
Gabriel Camarena is raising his hand.
Sorry, very good to see you all, and congratulations for these excellent projects. I think the border, we have lived here and we've seen it grow so much that we need to explore every opportunities that we have for different types of border crossings, should I say, mobility. So it is very important, I think, for the authorities, especially for CBP, I think, which is the one that controls all border entries and the way it, us as pedestrians or cyclists in the future, or any kind of crossing like the automobile should cross for them to manage properly. So I congratulate each and every one of you, and I suggest very much that I would like to have these meetings that all the stakeholders agree on basic concepts, so this can move forward. And these planning stages are for that, especially. I think it's very important in this time that the new government of Tijuana, through the Secretaría de Movilidad, is working and should have all the opportunity to make this project be real, no? And obviously Sandec has been there for a long time, and I know they will be a great planner for that, because they were made for that. And so I just wanted to recommend that all parties, all the stakeholders agree on basics on how to cross this border more efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have additional comments?
I don't see hands raised.
Well, thanks very much. It's exciting to hear about the progress. I didn't realize that all this effort first started in 2011, and it's been going on quite a while, but I think little by little things are happening. Next, I'd like to turn to item number 5 on our agenda. Melissa Floca from the University of San Diego Kroc Institute will discuss a recent report, or highlights of a recent report that analyzes the regional transborder Cali-Baja economy. This kind of analysis is difficult because finding the data is always a challenge, but is extremely useful when trying to understand how the region actually functions. So Melissa, please take it away.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here today. We can go ahead on to the next slide. The report that I'm going to share with you all was prepared by the Aller Center for International Business at USD in collaboration with the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce. And in addition to myself, the other authors on the report are Alan Jen, and then who's also from USD, and David Shirk from USD. But as in years past, when we've put this report together, we were able to work with colleagues in Baja as well. And so additional co-authors include Pedro Oraca from COLEF and Ramon Medina Sanchez from UABC. And then we were also assisted by one of our graduate students at USD, Trigio Canedo. And so while I don't think any of the other co-authors are here today, I just do want to acknowledge and underscore the importance of doing this work with data from both sides of the border and with colleagues from both sides of the border. And it's an effort that we certainly couldn't do if we didn't do it with that binational approach. The data and sources for this report, most of them are publicly available. So we're using US and Mexican data by industry sector using the NAICS codes, which helps us understand the sectors that we're talking about and compare the sectors on the Mexican side to the sectors on the US side. And so we also use BLS data and INEGI data. The only proprietary data source that we're using comes from EMSI, and that is because we don't have any publicly available sources of data at the 4-digit NAICS code for value added on the San Diego side of the border. And so basically this data is letting us count the number of workers and the number of firms and the contribution of those workers and firms to GDP in San Diego and to GDP in Baja, and then in each of the municipalities in Baja. And we're using 2018 data unless otherwise noted, because that's the last time that the Mexican economic census came out. And so we are a bit limited in this work in that we can only do this every 5 years when that data is released on the Mexican side. The most important finding from this report is basically that we have this particular set of industry clusters, which happen to all be manufacturing industries, where we really have a very high concentration of workers and jobs, not on the San Diego side of the border or the Baja side of the border, but on both sides of the border at the same time. And so we use location quotients, which helps us understand when there's a higher concentration than normal of workers in a particular industry. And so, for example, when you see medical equipment and supplies here, that means that San Diego and Baja collectively have 10 times the normal number of workers in this industry. The semiconductor and electronic components industry has 5.6 times the average number of workers for Mexico and the United States in this industry. So these are places you can see with audio and video equipment, for example, 24 times the number of workers. So these are places where the San Diego Baja region, Cali Baja, really has a very different kind of economic, a very different kind of economic construction than other places in the US or in Mexico. And collectively, we have 229,000 workers working in these industries where we have this concentration and specialization on both sides of the border. And those industries together generate every year, or generated in 2018, $17 billion worth of value. So that's $17 billion of a contribution to the region, the Cali Baja region's GDP. And that's about 7 or 8% of the region's GDP, to give you an understanding of the importance of just these cross-border industries where we really have San Diego and Baja working together. Next slide. So the key takeaways from this work are that we have these very important employment concentrations on both sides of the border, with 52,000 jobs in San Diego and Imperial and 177,000 jobs in Baja. $14.9 billion of the value that's created is created on the San Diego side of the border. So these are industries that are really generating a lot of value. And then in Baja, it's $2.2 billion of value added that's generated by these industries on the Mexican side of the border. And so in addition to the 225,000 workers who are working in these industries, there are an additional 162,000 professional, scientific, and technical service workers that are supporting them, and 286,000 more manufacturing workers who are connected to these manufacturing industries. And of course, all of this is supported by 50,000 college graduates that the region is producing each year, 16,000 of those in STEM fields. There are some industries that we see on the Mexican side of the border, and so the report is available online. I have the link at the end of the presentation, and if you go to the link where the report is located, you can find the tables that will give you the numbers for the location quotients, jobs, firms, and value add for each of the industries. So for hundreds of industries across the region, you can see the industries where we have cross-border specializations, where you really see the specialization on both sides. And then you can also see the industries like these, for example, that I'm showing here in Tijuana, where you have a very high specialization and concentration of workers, but you don't see it across all of the municipalities in Baja. You don't see it on the San Diego side of the border. These are places that you see really the industry specialization in Tijuana. And you can look at that in the report for Mexicali or for San Diego and see how the different regions differ. But just to give you an example, here's just a handful of additional industries where you have 72,000 workers just in Tijuana, and another $1.2 billion of value added. So really, we do see these industries that are of incredible importance to the region. On the San Diego side of the border, for example, we have just two manufacturing industries, additional manufacturing industries where San Diego has a specialization, but Baja doesn't. And those are ship and boat building and pharmaceuticals. So you can see there are some things that San Diego manufactures that we don't manufacture with Mexico, but not very many. It's most of the manufacturing activity in San Diego is directly linked to our cross-border connections. And I think as everyone in this group knows, we did see trade dip down during the pandemic. And so we saw a couple of months where the trade moving back and forth across the US-Mexico border at the land ports here in California was down. It was down pretty substantially, but then it did jump right back up. And you can see that this is imports from Mexico. And on the next slide, you can see exactly the same behavior with imports from the US to Mexico, or exports as it were. So really the same behavior, but we saw those numbers go right back up and recover. And although we saw this $6 billion dip in total trade over just a couple of months in 2020, it went right back up to normal levels. And we saw and continue to see $200 million of goods moving back and forth between California and Mexico each day. What I think is very interesting, and this is Alan Jen's contribution to this report, is that in San Diego, we saw employment hit bottom in April 2020 during the pandemic, but the industries that suffered the biggest job losses were really our cross-border industries. It was retail, trade, accommodation, and food services. In contrast, the industries with those strong cross-border ties like manufacturing really limited job losses to the single digits. So manufacturing was down just 7%. That's the yellow line. You can see that almost didn't budge. Same with professional, scientific, and technical services. San Diego didn't see much of a drop in employment in those industries. So the industries where we have these cross-border ties were very, very robust in terms of employment numbers through the pandemic. Next slide, please. And then just as I wrap up, for cross-border workers and students, and again, I know I don't need to say this to this group necessarily, but we do have many cross-border workers who cross the border in both directions. 12,000 cross-border students who cross the border every day. And we need to, of course, continue to focus equally, not just on the movement of goods back and forth across the border, but of the movement of our workers and our students who make such important contributions to the region's cross-border economy. And so in conclusion, and again, you can see all of the data and more of the analysis in the report, but in conclusion, of course, there's the continuing need to improve cross-border infrastructure. We wish we had more and better data. We can see a lot of very important things with the data that's available, but data has limits, especially because we can't really draw conclusions about specific firms, and we can't draw conclusions more than every 5 years when the economic census data comes out from Mexico. We have seen in this work really very strong regional stability over the last decade. And so in the report, you can see these numbers for 2014 and for 2009 when Mexican census data, economic census data came out previously. So we've seen a lot of stability across manufacturing industries, but that's both an opportunity and a risk, of course, as global manufacturing changes. And then last, but certainly not least, probably the most important piece of this is the need for reskilling for Industry 4.0 and inclusive economic development strategies that make sure that not just companies, but firms and workers can move up the value chain and can use these regional specializations to improve the livelihoods of families and improve communities in our region. You can find the full report here. And like I mentioned before, all of the data tables are there as well. So if there are industries that are especially important to you, you can see the data for each of those industries and have access to not the raw data, but all of the analysis that we did for the report. So I hope people find that useful. And of course, we're very happy to receive any feedback that folks have about how we could make this more accessible and intuitive and helpful for your work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Terrific report and well worth looking at carefully. A lot of useful data and a lot of interesting questions raised. Do we have questions from the COBRO team, COBRO members?
You have a question from Jason Wells.
Jason?
Yeah, actually more of a comment. Melissa, thank you guys. This is a fantastic output that you did. As a matter of fact, we were actually able to use this. There's a group of San Isidro stakeholders led by Vivian Moreno, Council Member Vivian Moreno, Supervisor Nora Vargas, NGOs like ourselves, Otay Mesa Chamber. There's 30 signatures on a list of 10 suggestions to make the border better. And we used your statistics to really start building, or not start, but to help build the case on that. Both your report and the Time magazine, the other crisis at the border, talking about the environmental side, were fantastic in helping us put together the work. I did just want to add, I think it's important to mention, I think it's your second or third to last slide, when it was talking about how the dip, the pandemic dip for industries and tech side wasn't as large as one might think because of their cross-border connections. I think it's important to note our region was affected more by the political decision to restrict the border than it was the pandemic itself. And that's why you saw that, because tech and cargo was protected. What was not allowed to cross were those retail shoppers, which is why you saw the retail and the hotel industry and so forth. So I think it's very important to point that out, that it wasn't really the pandemic, but the knee-jerk political reaction or political decision to restrict the border that caused those losses. But and again, thank you guys. You did fantastic work.
I'm very glad it was useful.
Other comments from COBRO? I have a quick question, Melissa, this is Paul. The hospitality industry enters into your report kind of on the edges, partly because I suppose employment is spread across different NAICS codes, and it's hard to really pin down. But your report suggests that cross-border connections between the San Diego and Tijuana hospitality industries are not very significant. Am I reading that right or not?
So we do see industry specializations in hospitality on both sides of the border. The LQs are not as high as the LQs are not as high as the manufacturing industries, but they're there. And so you'll certainly find, you don't find the same NAICS codes having specializations. But you find, for example, that you certainly, Tijuana has a specialization because of the soccer stadium. So that you have a lot of jobs because of the soccer stadium that give it a specialization. You have specializations in terms of tour operators on the San Diego side of the border. So you do see that the region collectively, if you went up a couple of digits, maybe to the third digit with NAICS codes, you would start to see those hospitality industry specializations come out more for the cross-border region. We certainly have them. What I think happens in the analysis is that you don't have commonalities between the specializations on the San Diego and the Baja side of the border at the 4-digit NAICS code, but you would find them for sure in the hospitality industry at the 3-digit NAICS code. I don't know if that is helpful or if that's too technical of an answer, but that's just to say that yes, we do have those specializations as a cross-border region as well.
Thank you.
Sure, so you also have a question from David Perez Tejada, State of Baja
Yes,
California.
please.
Thank you, Hector and Dr. Ganster. I would like to congratulate Melissa Floca, as I did in the border committee, because this is a great cross-border effort for this study. And as I told you before, we need to spread the word out on this study. We need Mexico City and Washington, D.C. to listen the message on how's this region doing. We are a one metropolitan region, binational region that needs to have a strong collaboration in all the different sectors. So as the government of Baja California representative, I just want to support you and find ways of collaboration in the near future. And I also like to take the opportunity to congratulate the initiative on Tijuana CDT with Mr. Camarena and all the people that is doing this collaboration within the binational region on the cycling and the bike lanes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other comments?
Nathan Owens, UCSD San Diego Connect and San Diego Dialogue.
Go ahead, please.
Thanks. Just a comment, really. Today's meeting checked a lot of boxes for me as a enthusiastic bike rider and also someone who's geeked out on economic development data for many, many years. Lots of hard work has been done, so great to see a lot of progress. And as far as the economic data, yes, echoing the statement that was just made, the more that this data can be surfaced and then provided to a lot of decision makers in DC and Mexico City, I think the better the region is for it. So I really appreciate all the hard work that Melissa and others have done here. It's great. Thanks.
Are there additional comments?
I don't see hands, Chair Lanster.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank all the COBRA members and our special presenters today. Our next meeting of COBRA will be on Tuesday, June 7th at 3 p.m. It will again be a virtual meeting. Is that correct, Hector?
It is correct, and perhaps if you can allow a last comment from Karen Igareda, CBX.
Yes, certainly. Go ahead, please.
Hi, everyone. I just want to thank you for the invitation. And I want to reintroduce myself. I see a lot of familiar faces, but I am now with CBX as Director of Public and Government Affairs. So if you need anything, please reach out. And I'm happy to keep connecting with you guys on these meetings. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So with that and our next meeting set, let me adjourn today's meeting, and thanks again to everyone. Bye-bye.